Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amanda Ray, and this is a familiar face. You guys have seen him before on my channel. This is my little brother, Jakey.
Hello, everybody.
I'm going to leave the link to the video we already did together in the description box down below. That video was more about your story, right?
Mm-hmm. Kind of the story of how I left the order, yeah.
Yeah, but today we kind of just wanted to do a little bit more of a... I really want to talk about our relationship and how it's evolved, because obviously we had a relationship in the order, and then when I left we weren't allowed to have a relationship, and now we're kind of rekindling that relationship out here. We talked a little bit in the last video about how, because I was like, what did mom and dad tell you about me when I left?
Oh yeah.
And how that kind of severed the ties. But then you said that you still watched my YouTube.
Yeah, it was essentially like mom and dad, when I went to like talk to them about it, they would just be like, don't listen to her. But I would still, like, secretly, without them knowing, be listening to you, you know, and like feel like I feel like I just related to you a lot, and then mom and dad would just be like, everything she's saying is lies, and then, but I was like, well, what about these few things? And so I just wouldn't really talk to them about it, because I know they would just sweep it under the rug and not really talk about it.
And sometimes I felt like their answers didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, why am I even asking them? Because their answers are just like, don't question. Or like, you'll figure it out when you're older. Or...
Yep.
I don't know.
The biggest thing for me was, it was always like, just, you're not reading your scriptures enough to understand what I'm saying to you, basically.
So if you went to mom and dad with a question, then you have the potential risk of them just making you feel stupid for asking.
Well, always, yeah. I think that's kind of the main thing with it. It was like, I didn't know if something was worth asking because of it. Was like, a lot of times I would come out of that being like, oh, I'm just dumb, like, for even questioning that, you know.
Isn't that interesting that they want, and a lot of parents, in the order and out of the order actually, will want their kids to look up to them and want their kids to learn from them, right? They want to be the example, yet when the kids are trying to learn from them, then they're like, oh, you're so stupid.
It is an interesting thing. Looking back, you can see how it happened, but when you're there as the little kid, like, you just take it as it's normal to just, like, for your parents to look down on you that way.
Well, and you also, I didn't ever like, I obviously didn't even believe in depression, but I definitely had it. And you live in this society where everyone's depressed, so it doesn't seem abnormal.
Yep, exactly. And everybody else seems to be acting normal when really they're all just looking at everybody else to see how to act, you know?
Yeah.
So it's this whole big game.
Yeah, we were just talking about this actually before the cameras today, how when you're in a society where everyone's repeating the same thing, then you're just going to repeat that same thing. Because if you guys remember when I did an interview with Priscilla, and she talked about how basically she was engaged to her cousin because everyone around her was just like, yeah, this is a good thing, this is what you need to do. But deep down, she didn't want to do it. But no one was asking her if she wanted to do it. No one cared what her opinion on it was. And then finally she ran into our sister Rachel, and Rachel was like, well, do you want to do this? And then Priscilla was like, no. And then Rachel was like, then don't do it. And it just took that one person to help validate her feelings.
One person to think differently, and then she was like, oh, that's an option?
Right.
And actually saw it as an option.
And that's why a lot of people in the order will say, well, I chose to marry my cousin. I said I do at the altar with my half-sibling. But you were only given those little options.
Yeah, it's like, if it's the only choice you're given, then yes, you made that choice, but you weren't allowed the freedom to have other choices at the same time. You know?
And that's what's I think this is so hard for outsiders who have never been a part of a cult to really understand. It's not that, because a lot of people look at it like, oh, you guys really are choosing to marry your siblings, and why don't you just leave? Why don't you just get out? But when you're in, your brain doesn't understand how that's even physically possible. And also, everyone you're around hasn't left, so you don't see it to be something that is true.
Yeah, your brain doesn't even see it as the other cults that you can point out and say, like, oh yeah, that's a cult. But then your brain doesn't see your own situation as that bad thing.
It's true. Even when I left, I didn't even call it a cult for a while. Even though I knew I was going to be talking about it publicly. I knew that I was going to do what I could to basically not not burn it to the ground, but kind of.
Yeah.
Because I knew that it wasn't okay what they were doing to the women, especially because I would talk to my friends who were being forced to marry their cousins, and they were like, well, I just know that I have to, even though I hate this guy, but I have to because I know Heavenly Father wants me to. And I'd be like, what makes you think Heavenly Father wants you to? Oh, well, my dad said that Heavenly Father wants.
Yeah.
And so their brain really is thinking that they're choosing. And when I'm going to try to force him to watch the Vow on the Nexium cult, there are still people who were so manipulated by that cult leader who are still unraveling it and still think, well, I did choose to be a part of the sex slaves. But it's like, on your own free will, would you have done that? And think of Paul and his wives. On their own free will, would this woman who was born with all the knowledge that she's allowed to have on the outside, would she choose to marry her half-brother as a 27th wife?
Wow, yeah.
Like, is it really
Exactly.
choice?
They make you believe you have your own choices at the same time as making only the choices they want you to make.
Yeah. Do you remember being in the order, and was there some things that you could say you did actively say, this is my choice, I'm choosing this, but now looking in hindsight, you're like, actually, that wasn't true?
Yeah, basically I'll give you an example of how that played out in my life. And what it was is I thought I was choosing to go to electrician school, become an electrician, and
I do remember
trying to become... What were you saying?
Well, hearing that you were doing that, and I was like, what made you spark that?
Yeah, and I would say the biggest thing is I was doing that along with like trying to become like a priesthood holder in the church and everything, and I consciously thought like, yeah, this is my doing, my choices. But what was really happening was they were the only choices I could have made, the only path I could have made and still stay on my parents' good side, you know?
Yeah. So most of your decisions in your day-to-day was for parents' approval?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, I never went against what they wanted me to do, and so it just forced me into this one path, which was, okay, you can work in an order company, you can be focusing on the priesthood and everything, and that's all you can do. You know, like, anytime I did anything else, it was like play video games, say, then it was like my own time, or time that I just wanted to play and not be doing what I'm supposed to be doing, essentially.
So it was kind of like against what they wanted, but you needed that time for yourself?
Yeah, like basically any time to myself where I'm not working on what mom and dad wants and the cult wants, then...
You're selfish.
It's being selfish, yeah.
Yeah, I do remember thinking, even while I was in, that sometimes they would make it seem like we had a choice, like, oh, you have a choice to work here or here, but the truth is you don't have an option to not work. Same with marriage. You have a choice to marry this cousin or this cousin, but you don't have the option to not get married.
Yeah, so like they kind of don't even talk about the choices that they don't let you make, you know?
Right.
Just like swept under the rug, like, oh, this is just what everybody does. And so...
But again, like going back to what our topic was before this, if everyone's reiterating that, then you do think you have free will.
Yeah.
And I remember people in the order saying, we have the most freedom here in the order. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, I remember hearing my friends talk about that for sure.
What's their reasoning for that?
And the reasoning is always, we have the most freedom because righteousness sets you free from the rest of the world, basically.
Oh.
You know, if you're righteous enough, you'll have the most freedom in the world. Because truthfully, if you were free, you'd spend your entire life doing all these other things and find out that this is really what you wanted to do. That's always what I saw it as.
The righteousness.
You know,
it's so like looking back at all of the teachings of the order, almost everything is hypocrisy. Like just like that, like we're the freest here when actually I was the most chained I've ever been in my life when I was in the order. And then the G is for golden rule, I will treat others how I want to be treated. Yet the men treat the women like they need to be loyal to them. And whenever you ask the men, would you share your wife with anyone else? Absolutely not.
You see it play out, the hypocrisy there. They don't even go by their own rules because it's like different for men versus women. So it's like,
why are you preaching it then if you're not even living it?
Yeah, so basically one of their rules that they don't put on the ABC Order standards is women can be put down more than men.
Yeah.
That's one of the unspoken rules. So it just shows that we are following all this whole ABC Order standards, but there's unspoken rules as well that nobody looks at and actually factors into what's going on in the order.
Right, even like we talked about this on Escaping Polygamy. Andrea was like, B is for brother. I will never raise my hand against my brother. Yet they raise their hand against their kids. Some of them abuse their wives. So this is what and I think a lot of cults do this actually, because no one would join or want to be a part of something that's on the surface level bad. But on the surface level, the order has a lot of good rules. Like golden rule is something that a lot of people like to believe in, and they're also like trying to play off like they're this community that takes care of each other, and then they're the Lord's chosen people, and they I'd rather be a janitor in the house of the Lord than a king in any other kingdom.
Yeah.
So you see that surface level part of it, so it makes people be like, oh yeah, this is such a great place. But once you realize how it goes higher up the pyramid, like the more numbered men and the closer to Paul, there's way more hypocrisy happening. Like you guys saw my video with Catherine. Catherine married her uncle, and her mom married her uncle, so 2 generations of marrying uncles. Paul, the leader, encouraged her to get abortions because her babies were going to have 50% chance of coming out with deformities.
Wow.
So even though the order is like anti-abortions, once you get higher up there, you realize pretty much every rule doesn't matter as long as it's what Paul wants.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like they'll put it up on the wall, all the stuff that looks good to put up on the wall.
Yeah.
But then all the unspoken stuff that they truly believe in, it's not going to be put up on the wall. And so obviously we're going to be like, these are our standards.
Like they can't say A is for abortions. You can have them if you're marrying your uncle.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an unspoken rule that is still a rule. But since we don't put it up on a wall and represent the order as that, then we can't see the order as evil, because we only represent the order as all these good rules and everything, like the golden rule and everything.
Rules that they don't even follow.
Yeah, and the ones they don't follow and they
Actually,
step on.
rules, it should be lies.
Lies.
ABC of lies.
Yeah, me and Priscilla were talking about doing an ABC Order Standard episodes, but we're just making fun of every ABC Order Standard.
Well, it should really be what they actually do. Like,
Yeah.
okay, for kiss. I will kiss
My sisters.
I'll kiss my
I'll kiss my
nieces.
sisters and my nieces.
When me and Rachel were in the order, then remember that one time where we were so mad and we were like, "Case for kiss, I will kiss all the boys I see," because we were so mad.
Every boy I ever see.
But speaking back on the abuse thing, it's so interesting that they will literally have that in the not 10 commandments, but ABC Order Standards is like their 10 commandments, right? But there's so much physical abuse, and they teach physical abuse if your kids are out of line. But do you remember that one time? So mom would yell at me all the time. And so my one phrase that would give me my power back was to say, I don't care. So she'd be like, you need to do this, this, and this, because you don't want people to see your room's messy, or you don't want people to see that you don't clean yourself up, and you don't want to, and I would just say, I don't care, because then she had no power over me, because if I don't care, then it doesn't matter. So this one time I was saying that, and mom was like, you guys need to stop. You remember this? It was downstairs in 33rd, and she was like, you guys need to stop leaving your laundry on the top of the washer, and she was going on for 30 minutes, and I remember at this point, I remember thinking that I would rather get beat than have the 40-minute lecture.
Yeah.
Because the 40-minute lecture was a damper on my mental health, and getting beat, I could just walk away and like go about my day. But then this time she was like screaming at us, and you were just sitting there like putting your head down, and then I was so sick of it that I closed my eyes and I plugged my ears, and then all of a sudden I was flying into the wall because she smacked me.
Dad's abuse was contagious, because if he was gonna be able to smack you, then it's okay for mom to do the same thing, Yeah. And so then, since the younger kids, it wasn't normal for dad to do that, mom also backed away in the same way,
Well,
I also wonder if we were like the guinea pigs, and then they got tired of beat, because physically abusing your kids is actually more work than just talking.
So I think they for sure got tired of it and realized it didn't even work.
It doesn't work. So I feel like the first one's mom was like, no, like getting so
Yeah.
mad over every little thing. And then with the practice of all of these kids, she started learning a little bit more patience. Not a lot, but like she just doesn't care as much anymore.
But they definitely saw a correlation between less beating the kids and less kids leaving at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that crazy? It took 5 kids to leave. Like, maybe we shouldn't hit our
yeah,
kids.
maybe we shouldn't abuse the crap out of them.
How much abuse, though, do you guys think? Like, you guys were raised with the same parents, and you saw this abuse. How much abuse that mom and dad did was completely because they couldn't regulate their own emotions?
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All
Nobody
of
should
it.
ever be abusive.
I thought about this, and I was like, there were, because there's a lot of people who leave cults who still to this day will say, my dad slapped the shit out of me, but I deserved it,
Wow,
because I was being a little shit. But a lot of the times, if the kid is being a little shit, there's a reason.
Well, yeah, if the kid's being
It's
a little
all the
shit,
parents' fault.
the parents are little shits if the kid's acting like that way.
Well, the parents,
Because they all the kid can do is model their parents.
yeah, it's literally the kids don't know anything. You're born knowing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So like whatever you do that's bad is because of your parents. As a kid. you
Yeah,
know,
I saw a YouTube video the other day where this kid prank called 911 and they were like, hey, there's this van that's kidnapped these people, and they were like an 11-year-old kid just prank called 911 and got all of them to use their resources, whatever. It was a big deal. When the cops came in, they were all being mean to the kid, like, you shouldn't have made that phone call and everything. And what was weird is they didn't put any blame on the parents, and neither did the parents put any blame on themselves. When the parents saw it, they were like talking to the little kid, like, why would you do this? That was so dumb of you. Talking like the kid was stupid, when in my opinion, the parents should have let the kids know not to call 911 and had at least taken some of that blame, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that it just shows in society, like, the cops didn't see it, nor did the parents, and they were all putting it on that little kid, 11-year-old kid.
Yeah, this reminds me of, remember at that ice cream shop where we saw, it was something very small, but like we saw the dad ran into the kid because he wasn't paying attention. He ran into the kid, and then the kid kind of came towards us and kind of was getting in our way, and he instantly grabbed the kid and was like, "Oh, watch where you're going."
Yeah.
And
But
blamed
he's the one that pushed the
when He was
kid.
the one who ran into the kid
Yep.
and pushed, and the kid was just like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
But the kids take it on because we're still developing our brains. So then we're like, oh, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. But this is reminding me of the story of when, did I ever tell you the story of when mom left me home alone? Well, home to babysit the rest of the kids when I was 5, and she left the stove on. So she leaves the stove on, and there was eggs boiling, and she was like, in 5 minutes, turn off the stove. I'm gonna go drop Cammy off to piano lessons. And I'm 5. I remember because
my
Ray was like a
goodness.
baby crying when this was happening. And we were watching Free Willy, and so I don't know how to count either. I don't know how time works. And all of a sudden, there's smoke coming from the kitchen, and the eggs are flying into the ceiling, like exploding.
Exploding, yeah.
And my
whoa.
little 5-year-old brain is like, when mom always says whenever there's an emergency, go hide in her room. So I go upstairs where all the smoke is, and I take all the kids up there. But long story short, the firefighters got called. Teresa had to kick the door in, and then I remember mom looking at me being like, I told you to turn the stove off.
Oh my goodness.
And I was just a little kid being like, yep, I should have turned the stove off. It's all my fault. When
She was the one who left you home alone. That
And-
was her fault. That
Yeah.
whole
Yeah,
thing was
and
her fault.
seeing that, if that would have happened to you, you can see how you would blame yourself as the parent.
Yep.
But it's looking at that whole situation, it's like, how does mom not take any of that blame? You know,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
To be putting a 5-year-old in charge of that many things that
Yeah, like after that whole scenario, I would be like, I'm never leaving my kids that
Yeah.
responsibility again.
Right.
Like that was my fault. And I would feel like I would literally be so upset with myself, being like, my kids could have died.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like all of my kids could have died because of my mistake, but she blamed you.
Yep.
That's
Yeah, and
crazy.
I think that once you get used to that, it's easier to just be like, oh, this dumb little kid made a mistake, and it's not me at all.
But have you
know?
ever thought about this?
Not big blame.
All the times we got the shit bit out of us, we're like 5 years old, 6 years old, 4 years old. Who the fuck, as an adult, has beef with a 5-year-old?
For real.
Like, can you imagine right now having beef with a 5-year-old? Like,
Oh
how
my
immature that
goodness.
Can you
is?
imagine
Wow.
beating a 5-year-old? Like beating
Literally.
your kid?
Yeah.
As a little kid? Like that would be so
Exactly.
sad.
Not even a little kid, okay? Not that I could beat up some random little kid, but your little kid.
That's true, yeah.
It just shows that we, in the order, then they cultivated this idea that it's okay to beat your kids, when that idea only came from a weak person who couldn't regulate their own emotions.
Yeah.
You know, and so everybody
Yeah.
started to be that
Well,
way.
the only time you get so angry that you want to hit something, it's when you can't regulate those emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you need to take a step back and like de-escalate, or you understand yourself enough to give yourself what you need in that space.
Right.
But
Yeah.
nobody could do that in the order, so they're
But-
just like beating everyone up.
I
There's-
think
Oh, sorry.
you say first, then I'll say mine.
Yeah, well, there's examples of people who, there's like a psychologist who talks about anger and stuff like that, and how an anger is a cornerstone emotion, and it's good to feel those things, but he can get angry in front of his 6-year-old daughter, and he can be like, I'm angry, and like stomp whatever, and his daughter can look at that and be like, and because he told us an actual situation that happened, his daughter would look at him and be like, that was some pretty good anger, Dad. And she doesn't feel any fear with him getting angry or anything like that, because he's never going to take it out on other people. There's ways, basically what I'm saying is there's ways to show your anger in public situations without it being taken out on other people, and people are just afraid of feeling that inside of them, and so that's why they put it onto other people.
Whoa, that's
Interestingly
insane.
enough, which
I know, because I've never seen someone angry without taking it on as my responsibility to
We
make
haven't
them not
seen
angry.
Yeah.
We haven't seen healthy emotions.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
healthy anger. Because, yeah, I definitely can see that there's a way to do that. It's just I've never tried it myself.
Yeah.
Like, there's been maybe one time that I can remember being like, man, I'm really angry right now. I'm being able to voice it. Like, to you, remember being like, and a lot of the times it's after I get through that anger and I'm like, I'm sorry I was like that. This is how I was feeling. Like, remember in the car where I was like, I'm sorry I slammed the door. I shouldn't have
And
done
I
it.
did
This
get
is
like
why."
anxiety.
Yeah, like
from
you
it.
got scared because I expressed my anger in the wrong way. But if I can just get to that before expressing the anger, being like, oh, I'm really stressed out right now, this is why, then you wouldn't have to take on that energy, that I'm getting off.
Right.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so it makes sense that everyone in the order is beating their kids because they all don't even know how to regulate their own emotions, and so they want to see the child as the problem because that way they're not having to hold themselves accountable. They're not having to do the hard stuff and look inward. They can just blame it all on the child. But then the children have really bad self-esteem. But when you're getting upset in that way and it's actually a you issue, it's easier to just take the blame and get over it and move on. But I think the hard part is growing up where we grew up, failure is a huge thing. Like you can't fail. You failed, you're an idiot, and so then we treat failure or not being the perfect human being, which is unattainable, by the way. We beat ourselves up every time we're not hitting that. There's no downside in holding yourself accountable.
Exactly.
But that's the issue that we were raised to believe that's it has to be someone else's
Our
problem.
parents never did, so
Yep.
we didn't learn how.
That's true. We never saw it as an example. My thing that I was gonna say when I said you go first. Do you think that the order creates all of these people that are actually lacking empathy, that are abusive, that are kind of narcissistic? But do you think that it actually benefits Paul, the leadership, to have members who don't have empathy?
Yeah, for sure. I think what all of it is like back in the olden days when they would have kings. And of course, the king, what he's doing is going to, even if it doesn't directly help on the people's lives, then everything they do is just so that it can help the king. Essentially, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, because like if mom doesn't have empathy for us, she can cut us off when we leave. Then it's more power to Paul.
Yep.
Because mom's not gonna let us influence her. Because if the right hand offend, they cut it off. Right? That's what they say. Like cut off your family if they're not gonna be loyal to the order. But because they create this system where you have lack of empathy for your kids, you're able to beat your kids, you're able to not connect with your kids. Then you can also cut off your kids as soon as they do anything against the order.
Yeah.
So then really your only loyalty is to Paul.
Yeah, true.
Oh, yeah.
It's just using the way our minds work against us in a way, and
For
Paul.
Paul.
K is for kiss. Only women have to kiss on the wedding day. Men can kiss whenever they want.
Yeah, and another thing.
They don't have to save themselves for the one they marry because they married multiple times.
might as well
Exactly.
just say K is for kiss. You can only kiss me.
Only kiss Paul. But this is the only time we have right now. But we're going to do a 2-part series, one on my channel, one on Jakey's pretty soon. Jakey has to go to workies because he has to support his sisters. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was super fun, and we'll be posting more just like this, so stay tuned.
And save your kiss for your wedding day. Okay, bye.
Bye.